Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Q&A. I'm Joni Tomes. The date is the 26th of August and the year is 1968. Tensions are high tonight in and out of the studio here in West Berlin as we speculate on the repercussions of the Warsaw Pact nation's recent invasion of Czechoslovakia after the so-called Prague Spring. Before we begin tonight's show, however, we cross now to a video explanation of what the Warsaw Pact is and why it's raised the attention of so many people this week. As the end of the Second World War drew near, and the tide turned against Germany, even the alliances of the Allied forces began to sour, particularly with Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union. The ideological clash between capitalism and communism was too much to contain, and the Soviet Union built a blockade, both physically and ideologically, between its territory in Central and Eastern Europe and the West after their triumph over Nazi Germany. The Warsaw Pact was officially formed in May of 1955, with the nations of Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Romania joining the Soviet Union as satellite states, and closing themselves off from the rest of the world in what has been dubbed an Iron Curtain. The hostility towards and isolation from the rest of the predominantly capitalist world has raised tensions globally as proxy wars were waged in Korea and Vietnam, the nuclear arms race continues, and the continent of Europe, and particularly the nation of Germany and its capital Berlin, lie divided. While the Soviet Union insists otherwise, the main purpose of the Warsaw Pact is control and subjugation of their nearby territory for use as a buffer zone. This is why when there was a reforming movement rising in Czechoslovakia last week, moving the country away from pure communism, the militaries of the Pact nations combined to overthrow the government and replace it with a more Moscow-friendly one. Several thousand people were killed and injured during this operation, and this has prompted calls from many. What now? Are we safe here in West Berlin? Let's find out. And now introducing our experts. First up, the West German General, Ulrich de Maizière.
Good evening. I'm thankful to be here.
Our award-winning economist, Dr. Ben Fowkes.
Hello.
Next we have the US Senator and veteran in foreign affairs, Senator Noble.
It's certainly an honour to be here tonight and a pleasure to be among such distinguished company.
And the brilliant Professor Romulus Aardvark.
Good day.
Let's have our first question from the audience, please.
Hello, General de Maizière, in light of the recent aggression we're seeing from these Warsaw Pact nations and the fact they just invaded Czechoslovakia, do you think, General, that there might be particular cause for concern among Western, particularly capitalist nations along the Soviet border? I think that West Germany might be particularly at risk here. Do you think there should be tighter security, or do you think the current security is good enough?
In my belief, the Russians will not make an invasion because they are smart enough not to. They were there, the same as the United States. We came as close to nuclear warfare as ever. They didn't risk it in Hungary in 1956, and I don't think they will today. They will...
General, please, the communists are braver than ever, and the threat they pose to the world is greater than ever. The threat of communism should always be taken with the utmost seriousness and importance. Now the Warsaw Pact needs to know that its actions are seen and condemned by the free world.
I know the threat of communism should always be treated highly, with the utmost vigilance. I also know the price of negligence is high. And I also know that the war with the USSR is no one's best interest. And yes, the Warsaw Pact needs to show the severity of their movement and that we hold their actions in contempt. But war will not benefit no one, and the Soviet Union knows this.
Hello, we've got another audience member who'd like to ask a question. So my question is for Dr. Ben Fowkes tonight. So I've recently read your book, The Rise and Fall of Communism in Eastern Europe. One thing you didn't address is how a communist nation can support the immense population of the USSR. It seems impossible that a static state-run system such as communism can keep both the USSR moving and support a war on multiple fronts and several proxies. It seems impossible. How exactly do you believe it to be possible? And is the system of communism sustainable over a long period of time?
You see, a communist nation is much like an anthill or a beehive. The more everyone collectively works, the more everyone gets, as more than they would usually in a capitalist system. Only, and in practice it often results in more universal suffering than universal equity. Now, despite the massive amount of agriculture and just general resources the USSR can create and put out. It has one of the weakest economies in the world and in this war because it limits its trade based on its ideologies. But I wouldn't be surprised if over the next decade we would start seeing cracks and chips. The USSR dissolving, the Iron Curtain being pulled up, a famine, civil war, unrest, they're all up in the air. In the end, the short answer that you're looking for is no, a communist nation cannot run indefinitely, just as any other state-run government can't run indefinitely. It's kind of a blanket statement, isn't it? I mean, I don't misunderstand me. I don't think communism is a good system, but I don't think it's incapable of running, or at least is partially running, a state on its own merits. It might be inefficient and unusual, but it's not unheard of to hear it working, like in Scandinavia and a few countries in Southeast Asia, I think.
Hello, we've got another audience member who'd like to ask a question.
My question tonight is to the whole panel. What do you think about the longevity of a communist system such as the Warsaw Pact and the USSR? Do you think the USSR will be around at the turn of the century, and do you think it's possible that communism will collapse on its own?
Well, to be honest, it's very hard to tell what's going on behind the Iron Curtain, but as far as we know, they are most likely in a very strong position, fiscally and militarily. As well as this, the unmatched amount of lands they control do mean that they have many mouths to feed, but it also puts them in a pretty good position when it comes to production. As well as with the members of the Warsaw Pact, they can use that to their advantage and create a jointly secure military position. Well, in the end, as far as I can tell, the USSR will definitely be around for the next decade, maybe even the next one after that. Looking centuries ahead is obviously impossible, but I don't know, they have a very strong position. But whether it's the same USSR, well, only time will tell.
Whatever length of time it is, the American people will match it. And the United States will remain the staunch defender of individual freedoms in the next decade. With God on our side, we will stride boldly into the next century. The USSR is a nation with no freedom for the individual, and a nation with no freedom for the individual is bound to harbour uprising. So however long the USSR lasts, the United States and NATO will last longer.
I agree with the Senator, because also an army of people who have no belief in their own liberties as free individuals can and will not beat an army of those who do.
Hello, we've got another audience member who'd like to ask a question.
This is a question for Professor Aardvark. Do you think with all of the recent tensions there will be a chance of people seeing family in the Eastern Bloc? I have a family in Poland, so do you think there will be a chance of seeing them?
Well, see, based on the movement of the Warsaw Pact nations and, no, sorry, I don't think so.
The fact of the matter is, and I'm sorry to say, right now, for many people, it's a luxury to even know their family is alive. It's called the Iron Curtain for a reason. News, food, goods, and people. Very little comes across. And what does come across is only representative of a tiny fraction of within. So bearing that in mind, no, we cannot say you'll be able to see your family again.
Due to time constraints, we now move on to tonight's final question.
My question is to the entire panel. What's the endgame here? What do NATO and the Free World Plan do to beat the communist bloc? And what if, despite all our best efforts, we end up in nuclear war? What's the plan then?
Well, it goes without saying, I hope it doesn't come to that. I mean, I have faith that we never will, not after Cuba, but that's just a hypothesis, and I don't privilege of sitting on the senior NATO meetings. I'd say that there are quite likely strategies in place for a non-violent method of victory. The war is one of ideologies, so naturally they would have to defeat the very idea of communism. What that is, I don't know. I suspect very few do. If we end up in nuclear war, then God help us. With as many warheads as there are in the world, we could be doomed today if someone were to fire the first shot. It would be mass extinction. I don't think avoiding thinking about it or pretending that the possibility doesn't exist will do us any good.
I'd rather not say too much on this, don't want to give away tactics to the enemy, you know. But I will say this, NATO, and particularly those of us on the edge of the Iron Curtain, we know what we're doing. We will push back the communist scourge. and we will do it quickly and effectively. And if it does come to nuclear war, and it won't, but if it does, we will win.
Amen to that, General. I can assure you, we have a plan. We will cut off the supply and allies of the Soviet Union and make it impossible for them to function as they do. We will liberate Eastern Europe and any other peoples subjugated by communism, be it in Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, South America, or Oceania. If the communists want to take their war and twisted ideology to any country, we will be there to defend it. Eternal vigilance and a plan for action to stomp the weed of communism wherever it grows is what's needed to defeat it.
A noble way to put it, Senator and I hope we always have the word on our side in this war, for they will be instrumental to winning, as any force of arms we have ready.
I have to agree, General. Forming alliances not just with the communists, but with also other countries can hold us in good stead and allow us to form strong alliances that might spell the end of the USSR. A global solution is necessary, since no one nation will be able to hold back the forces of a union so powerful as the Soviets.
That was certainly an interesting final question, and it's left us with a lot to think about tonight. All of our experts have had their say, but alas, we're out of time. And as all good things must come to an end, so too must this enlightening discussion we've had tonight. Please thank our panel of experts, General de Maizière, Dr. Ben Fowlkes, Senator Noble, and Romulus Aardvark. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in future editions of Q&A. Thank you and good night.